Summer of the Mariposas by Guadalupe Garcia McCall, read by Melinda Garcia. Chapter 9. La araña, una araña entre más hermosa, más ponzonosa. The spider. The prettier the spider, the more poisonous it is. I passed out even as I called out to La Llorona. She awakened me what I guessed to be a few minutes later, not with ghoulish wails as might be expected, but as a mother would wake her beloved child. She sat at the edge of the bed and called my name softly, gently, as she stroked my hair. Odelia, wake up, mijita, she whispered with maternal warmth. I can't, I said, opening my eyes slowly. They felt heavy and swollen with sleep. You have to, she said softly. It's important that you get up and purge yourself from this sweet emptiness. My stomach was aching dully, and my head felt like it was wrapped in layers and layers of gauze. Something's wrong. I don't feel well, I complained. Everything around me looked foggy and dark. Odelia, you need to drink this. La Llorona lifted my head off the pillow and put a warm glass to my mouth. Drink, child. Your life depends on it. It took all of my strength to open my mouth and sip the warm liquid in that glass. It was bitter and tasted like rancid grapefruit juice. Cringing, I started to spit it out, but La Llorona coaxed me until I swallowed the rest of it down. Suddenly, I felt it, the need to puke. I flipped the sheets aside, jumped out of bed, and ran to the adjoining bathroom, my rubbery legs almost giving way under me. I reached the toilet just in time to empty the vile contents of my stomach into it. What did you give me? I asked. I turned on the bathroom light and rinsed my mouth in the sink. I was so weak. I had to rest my upper body on the vanity. I'd never been so sick in my life. I felt like something ill was festering in my stomach, and my head felt like a piñata stuffed with cotton balls. It's Cecilia's sweetness, La Llorona explained. It took control of you. The goddess sent me to give you a little bit of help to make you expel it. We need to wake my sisters. I made my way back to the bed and sat on the edge because the room was still spinning a little. Where can I get more of that stuff you gave me? Come, follow me, La Llorona commanded from the doorway. Now that I could notice more than my own sickness, I saw that her hair was not white anymore, but dark, and just as disheveled as it had been when I first seen her on the riverbank. Her eyes were deep hollows, and her cheeks were gaunt, but she wasn't scary. She just looked like a tired woman again. With a wave of her hand, the door opened, and La Llorona went through it. She was the only one who could help me now, so I followed her out of the bedroom. She walked down the stairs without making a sound. My own feet felt as light as feathers as I stepped over the floorboards, and I wondered if it was her miraculous tonic making me feel so weightless and swift. Quietly, we made our way through the spacious living room and past the formal dining room, guided by the bright light coming from the far end of the house. La Llorona stopped just short of entering the kitchen. We stood hidden in the shadows of the hall. La Llorona in front of me, with me looking over her shoulder. Someone was moving around in the kitchen. Who's that? I asked quietly, so as not to be heard. Cecilia en su gloria, in all her spectral splendor, La Llorona whispered as an ancient, haggish woman walked into view. This is her true form. The woman you see by day is an illusion reflected by the sunlight. It is created by the potions she mixes in this kitchen and then secretly adds to her special treats. It seemed unreal to me, but the woman in the kitchen was wearing the same clothing Cecilia had worn that morning. Her hair, however, was as gray and dusty as moth wings, and her sagging, wrinkled skin almost hung off her face like a worn leather sack. She was grinding out something hard in a big black three-legged mortar. The molcajete's legs kept thumping against the table, making an ominous rhythmic sound. Her discolored tongue poked in and out of her prunish mouth, and she puckered and twisted her craggy lips as she ground a coarse white substance into powder with a big fat pestle, just like the one Mama uses to make her homemade salsas. What is she doing? I asked. Getting ready for tomorrow, La Llorona whispered, pushing me deeper into the shadows of the hall. Cecilia is baking for you and your sisters. You have become her special pets. But that wasn't any ordinary baking Cecilia was doing in there, because unlike Mama, she wasn't swallowing any of the pottery concoction herself as she tasted it. Instead, every so often, she would test its consistency by rubbing a pinch of it between her thumbs and forefinger, put a little on the tip of her tongue, and immediately spit it out. When she was done grinding the unusual ingredient, she spooned its fine white particles into a miniature sieve and dusted the top of 4 freshly baked pies with it. What is that? Some kind of sugar substitute? I asked, touching La Llorona's shoulder to get her attention. To be sure, La Llorona whispered, turning to look at me. Its sweetness comes from the seeds at the heart of the chinchontel plant. It's a sedative more potent than any sleeping pill you can buy at a farmacia. Do you mean? I started. Yes, Odelia. La Llorona whispered more quietly than before. She is medicating you and your sisters, sweetening your thoughts, dusting your dreams with a sugary sedative so sweet and satisfying you'll never want to wake up for fear of never feeling this happy again. Those pies are meant to keep you here forever. Oh my God, I whispered. I couldn't believe it. I had put my sisters' lives in the hands of a witch. It was like something out of a storybook, like Hansel and Gretel finding the gingerbread house in the woods. I should have remembered Mama's advice and been more wary. I should not have accepted food from a perfect stranger. But in this day and age, who would have thought fairy tales could come to life? Even those tales of razors and Halloween candy are just urban rumors. No one would have suspected Cecilia, not Mama, not me, but especially not my sisters. They relied on me to keep them safe, and now I have to do just that. We have to do something. We can't just stay here. For now, all we can do is wait, La Llorona said. She will be done soon. Come, we must hide and wait for her to leave. We hid behind the French panels in the living room and waited. La Llorona was right. Cecilia was done within minutes. She turned off the lights and left the kitchen. When she was gone, and we were sure she couldn't hear us, we crept into the kitchen. La Llorona removed the lids from the footed pie dishes, picked 2 of them up, and pointed to the others for me. I took the 3rd and 4th pies, and we snuck outside quickly. Quietly, we walked across the lawn, all the way to the back of the yard, past an old orchard, where we came across a long row of pig pens lined up behind a small, weather beaten barn. Pig slop, she said as she emptied the pie dishes into the trough inside the first pig pen. Go on, they won't bite. Won't they get sick? I asked, still holding the pies in my hands. Not any more than you did. The potion's not meant to kill. Just to keep you loopy and happy all the time, La Llorona whispered, taking the pies from me and throwing them next to the others herself. The worst that can happen is they'll sleep through the day tomorrow. Now, about your sisters. They're going to be groggy in the morning and probably won't want to get up. You'll have to give them some jojotle juice. I followed La Llorona along the garden paths that meandered around the backyard, winding in and out and around each other. That bitter stuff that made me throw up? I asked. See. She bent over to examine a dark, spidery plant growing along the fence to the left of the house. You only need a few leaves this much. You'll have to soak them in warm water for an hour. Then, when the water turns purple, you take the sprigs out and make your sisters drink the potion. They only need a few sips. It's a strong remedy, so don't let them ingest too much. But what if I do it wrong? I asked. Why can't you stay and give it to them yourself? You have to have faith, Odelia, La Llorona said, putting her hand on my cheek in a motherly caress. You come from a long line of curanderas, healers of the people. Your abuelita Remedios has been using her gift all her life. When the time comes, you'll know exactly what to do with this. Abuelita Remedios is a curandera. I remember now. She showed me her garden once, I said, taking the sprigs of hojatil, turning them over in my hands and bringing them up to my nose for a quick whiff. This looks like yerba buena, only it's darker and more potent by the smell of it. Yes, La Llorona said, smiling at me. It's a primitive herb dating back to an ancient time, before the fall of our beautiful Tenochtitlan, La Llorona said. It is what we gave our squinkles, our little ones, when the mal aire had crawled in through the windows at night and bewildered them. But that was before the river ate my children, before the arguments with Hernan, when we used to be a family. I'm sorry, I whispered. My heart suddenly ached for her, and I wondered if this sadness, this pain that seemed to overwhelm La Llorona, was what Mama felt after Papa left. When she went to bed at night and cried alone in the dark. Did she miss having a family then? Was it the family and not Papa she had mourned? Had we misjudged her sorrow? I knew she was missing us now, afraid she would never see us again. The guilt of it stabbed at my heart as I considered all these new facts, and I felt a great pain in my chest. Standing next to La Llorona in the darkness, I suddenly felt ashamed. Come, La Llorona said, rubbing my arm with her cold, dead hand. There's no time for regrets. The beautiful dawn, La Aurora, will be here before you know it. You must prepare yourself for the confrontation that will ensure with her arrival. It will take more than cleverness. It will take courage to get away from the sorceress. La Llorona walked away from me then, and I watched as she disappeared into the darkness. Suddenly cold, I ran back up to the house and tiptoed upstairs to the bathroom in my room. I put the sprigs of jojotil in a glass of warm water, hid it under the sink, and then slipped back into bed in the blue room. I didn't go to sleep though. I stayed wide awake, staring up at the full moon outside the wide, arched windows next to the bed. I had never noticed it before, but the silhouette of a woman was outlined in the brightness of that moon. Her hair was flowing in the wind, and she appeared to be looking back at something or someone behind her. I felt I could learn something from the woman in the moon. From now on, I would look over my shoulder at every turn. I would make sure I knew who or what was lurking around me, waiting to harm us when I least expected it. For many people in this world were not who they claimed to be, and evil dwelled where you least expected it. It had certainly been that way with Cecilia, the beautiful butterfly who had turned out to be a poisonous wasp. The moon made me think of Mama too, looking over her shoulder, crying for her loss, waiting for the day when she could see us walk through the door again. I knew she was frightened for us, because even with as much crying as she had done over Papa the last few months, I could tell this crying was different. When she looked into the camera in that interview and begged for our safe return, I could see how much not knowing where we were or if we were alive was killing her. I'm sorry, I whispered to the moon before I closed my eyes and cried for Mama as I faced my guilt. A few hours later, when the dawn started breaking over the horizon outside my window, I did as La Llorona advised. I tried waking up the girls, but they were dazed and disoriented and wanted only to be left alone, to linger in bed a little longer. I forced them to drink the jojotil juice. They coughed and complained about the bitter taste before they ran, one by one, into the restroom and threw up the nastiness in their stomachs. After the initial side effects wore off and they had stopped cursing my name, I told them what I had discovered the night before. I made them promise not to listen to anything Cecilia said to them. Then we all got our things together and made our way downstairs to face the bruja. Cecilia, looking like a vibrant mariposa in a purple tunic, her hair blossoming with sprigs of lavender, was fluttering about the kitchen, looking confused and agitated. What's the matter? I asked, as if I didn't know what was wrong. Oh, nothing, she said, smiling nervously. I woke up late and I just don't know what to make you for breakfast. How about some more of that sweetbread from yesterday? I think there's still some left. No, thank you, I said, trying not to let my emotions show on my face. We have to get going. Our grandmother is waiting for us. Here it is. Cecilia sing-songed as she pushed a tray of day-old sweetbread across the counter. Delia pushed the tray back towards Cecilia. We're not hungry. Here, pita, have a piggy. It's delicious, Cecilia said, picking up the front end of a piggy and waving it in front of the girls while she made cute little snorting noises. Pita tried to step back, but she faltered in her resistance. Cecilia took her face in her hand and tried forcing the sugary treat into her mouth. Pita flayed her arms and grunted from behind clenched teeth, resisting the witch's poison. Let her go, Velia screamed. She doesn't want any, I shrieked, pushing the tray of sweet bread off the table. It clattered to the floor, startling Cecilia, who turned around to look at the mess with wide-eyed amazement. Now look what you've done! Cecilia's voice suddenly changed. It was no longer sweet and melodic, but menacing and intimidating. I had a feeling the rest of the girls were about to meet the real Cecilia, and it wasn't going to be pretty. Pita ran into Juanita's arms, and we all stepped back. I stood in front of the girls, ready to protect them from the witch's rage. You ruined everything, she screeched as we huddled together in the corner of the kitchen close to the door. Now pick it up and eat it, or else. Or else what? I asked. You'll put us under a spell. Do you have some magical words? Some curse you plan to use on us now that we won't eat your medicated sweetbread? Are you crazy? Cecilia acted innocently, her face twisted into an indignant expression that was too fake to be effective. That's right. We know what you're doing, I said, my voice cracking momentarily. But we're too smart to be lulled to sleep by your lies anymore. I saw you baking last night. I saw what you put into those pies. But we're awake now, and we're not going to eat anything you tried to feed us. That's why we gave those tortas to the pigs. You don't believe me? Go see for yourself. Your pigs are probably snout down in the mud by now. You're being ridiculous, Cecilia scoffed. I didn't put anything into the sweetbread. Now clean it up before I get really mad. No, you clean it up. We're not your slaves, Juanita yelled. Cecilia lifted her arm with her palm open wide, ready to slap her. What? Are you going to hit her? I asked. Not while I'm alive. Then, to make my point, I unsheathed a butcher knife from its marble stand and wheeled it in front of her face. Now listen carefully and don't interrupt me. If you don't help us get home, we'll go straight to the cops when we leave here and make you wish you had. You see, Pita here is very good at crying. She can make anyone feel sorry for her. Not that she'd be pretending to cry. She's scared enough as it is. Pita was sobbing even now into Juanita's embrace. And there's enough evidence in this house and in our veins to prove that you were drugging us. Braced against the counter, Cecilia eyed the knife and then us. Taking in our determined faces, she slumped back, defeated. What do you want me to do? We need the keys to your car, I demanded. I don't have, Cecilia began, but I didn't let her finish her thought. Don't mess with me, I threatened. This is a very nice house you've got here, too nice to belong to a lowly police officer. Your husband had money, so I'm sure there's a car parked somewhere. And if there isn't? Cecilia's eyes were brimmed with tears, and suddenly she looked ancient. I resisted feeling sorry for her. What if this was another of her tricks? Like I said, we'll call the police. We'll tell them we were abducted and brought here where we've been fed chinchontel powder until we were almost out of our minds. I'm sorry, Cecilia said, hanging her head. I didn't want to hurt you. I was only doing it because I have no family, no husband, no children to play with. It was my dream to have daughters, many of them. But things went wrong for us long ago. My husband angered the ancient ones, and I've been paying for it ever since. doomed to dwell in this empty shell of a house. When you leave, you will see it for what it really is, a ruin from the past. As for a vehicle, I don't have one. Really, I don't. I don't have any money either. Everything I need, everything I have carved out of the dirt with these tired old hands. She's lying, Velia said behind me. Don't believe anything she says. Let's just go, Juanita said, her jaw firm. She's not going to help us anyway. Oh, yes, she will, I said, reaching up to spin La Llorona's ear pendant almost violently before Cecilia. Aztec Queen Tonachin, Holy Mother of all mankind, give us your magical assistance. Make this witch tell the truth so we can get to Abuelita's house. At my words, Cecilia fell under the spell of the spiraling circles of the earrings. Her pupils were so dilated that her eyes glittered and shone, becoming giant orbs of darkness. The witch's eyes and head bobbed side to side, following the light emanating from the ear pendant, much like a cobra follows the movement of the charmer's flute. That's some talent you've got there, Velia whispered. I just hope it works, Juanita said, pushing the twins back. They all backed up, widening the space between us and Cecilia, and I advanced on her. I turned my head to the side so that the revolving rings could work their magic to their full potential. Tell us how to get back home, I demanded of the witch. I can't help you, Cecilia said. The ancient ones have decreed it. I cannot leave this place. I am to dwell on this island in the desert for the rest of time. It is my fate, my doom. But I know someone who can help you. The old fortune teller Teresita. She lives up in the cerro, the hill behind the house. She has the gift. Even though she has cataracts, she can see beyond our limitations. Is this a trap? Are you sending us to another sorceress? Is she evil, like you and your kind? I pushed the tip of the butcher's knife against her jugular vein. The movement felt foreign to me, but we needed to know. I didn't like the harshness in my voice, but I was desperate to save my sisters, and the faster we got out of there, the better. Tell the truth, old witch, or I'll cut your throat, and then you won't have to dwell here anymore. Even as the cruel words left my mouth, I felt terrible about their callousness. No, it isn't a trap. The best thing you can do is see her. Teresita won't hurt you. She works only for good. It is her wisdom that finds the lost and turns the wicked. If she's a witch, how can she help us when you can't? Delia asked. Teresita's not a witch, Cecilia protested. She is a prophet, a seer. She'll know what to do. If anybody can help you, she can. You must go. Take the white goat in the barn, the young cabrito, as a gift for her troubles. She will be glad to receive it. Walk along the empty bed of the dry creek. Her house is 2 miles beyond the crest. There was a moment just after we'd tied a rope around the goat's neck and were pulling it out of the barn that I wondered if we wouldn't be better off just walking to the next town. Sure, it was hours away, but then we'd be sure we were in the real world and not some whack out fairy tale wormhole. Nevertheless, this felt right to me, like I was taking the path I was meant to take to bring my family together, the one La Llorona had told me about just 2 days ago at the river. I don't know how I knew it, but I was sure of it. Cecilia didn't lie about one thing, at least not after I hypnotized her and forced her to tell us the truth. When we walked away from her house and started to climb the hill with the goat in tow, we dared to turn around and look back. What we saw was not the same house we had believed we had inhabited, if only for a day. The dwelling at the bottom of the cerro was an old shack beyond repair. Just a few dry, weather-worn boards leaning haphazardly against a crooked frame, showing daylight through the cracked furniture within. For a moment, I felt sorry for the old, broken-down woman whose loneliness had turned her into a bruja, a fate worse than death, a fate I wouldn't wish on anyone, least of all Mama. But then the earring's spell must have broken because Cecilia, looking as old and wretched as her house, hobbled out of her shack. Thrusting a fist into the sky, she screamed that we would pay for threatening her. What happened to her? Velia asked, pulling on Delia's arm and pointed at Cecilia. Whoa, someone's got a wicked makeover, Cecilia said, bursting into petals of laughter. Cecilia let out another horrific scream before she yelled back at us. Don't laugh at me, you horrible brats! You have no respect for authority. But don't think you're going to get away with this. Shut up, you nasty old witch! Juanita screamed back, bending over at the waist to shout as loud as she could. You deserve everything you got. Run! Run as fast as you might, Cecilia yelled at us. But you won't get far. No one leaves here without my permission. And no one, absolutely no one, is allowed to mock me. Oh, we're so scared, Velia and Delia taunted. A craggy old witch is after us. Whatever should we do? Wherever should we go? La Llorona's words of warning echoed in my ears. You and your sisters must remain pure of heart on this journey, Odelia. Be courageous, but remember to also be noble, and everything will be all right. I hope it wasn't too late for me to heed her warning. I had to minimize the damage we might have already done. Stop it, I said, grabbing each of the twins by an arm and pulling them back to follow me. There's nothing she can do to harm us now. She's a broken old woman. No need to torment her. Come on, old woman, what are you waiting for? Juanita yelled from behind me, to which Cecilia responded with a blood-curdling wail that made us all stop. Come on, give it your best shot. Children of the dark, children of evil, your mother has been humiliated. Come to me now. Come back home. Punish these insolent girls. Unleash your wrath upon them. Make them suffer. Avenge my wounded pride, Cecilia hollered. She lifted her arms to the sky and screeched. The act made thunder explode in the distance and lightning flash all around us as sinister black clouds began to swirl directly overhead. It was enough to make us all run away as fast as we could, up the hill without looking back, for fear of the evil Cecilia had set upon us.